On this show, we begin a series on the ins and outs of some of Bangkok's more popular neighborhoods, beginning with our home turf, Thonburi.
So pack your bags and come visit us in the neighborhood that represents the future of Bangkok on the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who lost his passport on a beach after a full moon party in 2001 and never bothered to get a replacement so I can leave.
I don't believe any of your stories, but I am Ivo Terra, an American expat living full-time in Bangkok since the beginning of 2016. Thanks for joining us here in the Big Mango.
Now, first of all, we want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, our man, and I am going to butcher this name. I'm sorry, buddy, but ErQing Hui.
Nice.
Who supports us at the show shoutout level. ErQing Hui. I'm just going to go ahead and call you EQ from now on, okay? I hope that's all right. Well, EQ supports us at the show shoutout level, so stick around after we're done talking about the mighty Thonburi neighborhood to hear some juicy gossip that I found online about EQ. And also, you may remember that we said on our last show that our 50th patron would get a postcard, and our man, Han Choi, heard the call and made the leap. So, Han, look for something in the mail in the near future, buddy, and thank you for your support.
Now, before we jump into the conversation about living in our neighborhood of Thonburi, I'd be remiss, I have been remiss on mentioning a few reviews that have come in over the last few months. I'm sorry about that. Bear with me as I run through all of these things now that we finally, Greg, got our email stuff working out.
Finally.
Yeah, I know, I'm terrible. You might remember that we had a prior shout out a few weeks ago for Mr. Woolly Beans. Well, he also left a nice review. Back in Apple Podcast. I know, it's wonderful. On Apple Podcast in his native land of Australia back on December the 13th. Oh my God, are we late on this? He said, podcast gold and frankincense. So I live in Melbourne, Australia, and thus do not enjoy a freezing cold and white Christmas. I get you. I do, however, enjoy a refreshing, fun, and enlightening spin on Thai culture direct from Bangkok, which is exactly what I get from this podcast. Greg and Evo, awesome name for a sidekick.
Wait, who's the sidekick here?
He's calling me the sidekick. It's a long story. My other podcast that I do. So, produce a pretty special show together. It's very quickly turning into my favorite podcast channel. Love your work. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Woolly Beans. Again. Now, also, Greg, Pokey 3345. You know Pokey 3345. Not confused with Pokey 3344. That guy's a douche.
Yeah, I always get those confused.
He left a review also in the Australia Apple Podcast. We're huge in Australia these days. Back on December the 19th. And he said, My Weekly Fix is the title of his episode with 5 stars, by the way. Bangkok Podcast is a reliable and informative... Okay, reliable and informative show without taking itself too seriously. We can agree on that point. Great interviews from Greg and Evo, and they also offer helpful tips and insights into living in Bangkok/Thailand in a light-hearted manner. Although I'm a longtime listener, I'm now going back through some previous episodes that are now listed on Spotify. Woohoo! Keep up the great work, gents.
Spotify, baby. Yeah, that's our newest place to listen to the Bangkok Podcast.
Now, finally, Ed from Hong Kong left a review in, quite obviously, the Hong Kong Apple Podcast directory back on January the 4th. So I'm almost caught up to this month now. And he said, good show, great stuff. Just went to Bangkok last month and now in love with the city. Woohoo! Likes you guys shooting straight to the point and mince no word style. We like you too. The cultural comparison stuff is real cool as well. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you very much, Ed.
Ed, buddy, you got to be careful, man, because you came in, you got out. But one of these days, trust me on this. Trust me, Ed, you're going to come in and you're never going to leave.
Bangkok has you now.
That's right. So on this episode, Evo and I were recently talking, and we thought that it would be interesting to start discussing a little bit more of the specifics of Bangkok. Now, much of the time, what we talk about is the sort of macro topics of expat life, but we thought it'd be interesting to weigh in on some of the more popular or well-known areas of the city that we love so much. And of course, what better way to kick things off than the intergalactic headquarters of the Bangkok Podcast, and that is in Thonburi, where both of us live.
Yeah, it's a great place for us to start because, well, like you say, Greg, it's where we live. It's also not the most frequented of neighborhoods in Bangkok. I think you would agree.
I think I would agree. I think I mentioned before too, my friend who used to live in New York, who lives in Bangkok now, I told him I was moving here and he sort of held up his hand Kramer style. You might as well be dead to me. It's like living in Brooklyn. He goes, I don't go across the river. Are you crazy?
Right. And like the across the river in Brooklyn thing, you and I, Greg, can see downtown Bangkok. We can see the central business district of Bangkok. And it's what? 2 kilometers away, maybe?
Well, actually, you know what? I used to ride my bike. It was a 7-kilometer ride from door to door to like right downtown Central World.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's obviously not a straight line, but yeah, it's not too far away.
Super close.
How wide is the Chao Phraya River, do you think, at this point?
It's a little wider than my fist, but I don't know. I mean, if I had to guess, I'm going to say probably 150 meters if I had to guess.
Yeah, that's probably about right. I'm going to say 120. So let's say between 120 and 150.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that distance makes all the difference in the world.
It really does. I mean, that is it, because once you're past there, you're in the Siloam area and you're in the thick of things. But let's back up. For the listener out there, for you listening who might not know exactly what we're talking about when we say Thonburi, and there are a variety of different rules you can get to, and let's not deal with that. Let's just talk about the general area we call Thonburi. I'll put a link in the show notes to a map on Airbnb, which actually does a pretty good job, I think, of outlining the coordinates of this. If you're familiar with Bangkok, let me lay it out for you. Here's the great thing about living in Thonburi or understanding where Thonburi is. It's pretty simple to identify geographically because our eastern border and our northern border are completely defined by a bend in the Chao Phraya River. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Once you can't go any further north. When you stop north, you hit the Chao Phraya River. When you go east, you hit the Chao Phraya River. That's our border, right? That is it.
Yep.
Simple. Now, when you go south, that's also mostly defined because, again, we're on a bend in the Chao Phraya River. But at the very, very bottom of it, at the further south end of that, there's a thing called the Dao Kanong Canal. Now, also, if you're a Thai listener, please understand, I am the one that speaks the least amount of Thai. Nonetheless, I'm going to say these words. You're going to enjoy them. So the Dao Kanong Canal goes across there. From there, the rest of that southern part of our western border, if you will, is
the southern part of the western border.
I know, because we're already on the southern area. So, but if you go west on that southern border, you will eventually hit something called the Bang Sakai Canal, which I'm probably totally butchering that word, but it looks like Sakai to me. It slides a little further west along that to something which I think is a klong. I know it's a klong, and I think it's called Klong Ton Sai, which is the town I live in, Klong Ton Sai, but there's actually a klong there called Ton Sai, which means whatever Ton means, left, or Sai, right. I don't know.
Whatever Ton means left.
Whatever Ton means left, right. That heads north and then finally finishes along the western border of another klong called Bang Kon Tian, and that eventually winds up hitting the Chao Phraya River. So it's like this weird eyeball-ish shaped thing, if you will, a football, if you will, that's got the Chao Phraya River on the east and the north and most of the south, and then the western is this weird other klong system, which no one even knows exists. But hey, Bangkok was originally a city of canals, and so that's what this area is. Welcome to Thonburi, if that helps you at all, which it probably doesn't.
The interesting thing about Thonburi is that you say, I live in Thonburi, and most people kind of know roughly where that is, but technically, you and I live in Klong San.
Right.
Because Thonburi is sort of like the New York comparison is quite apt in this case. Because when you say, I live in New York, a lot of people assume that means the city of New York, when in fact it could be in the entire state.
Yes.
Similar over here, when you say you live in Thonburi, most people assume it's roughly where you and I live, which is in Klong San.
Mm-hmm.
But Thonburi has sort of come to mean the entire western side of the Chao Phraya River in Bangkok.
Right.
Even though it's a little bit more specific than that.
Yeah. It's much more specific depending on how you look from that. And it's only this part, which is right here. Because if you go further west than that, you wind up in Samut Sakhon and other areas because this city is gigantic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is huge. But we're really talking about the area that borders the Chao Phraya River. That's it. And extends a little further west than that. That becomes what we call Thonburi.
I think it's easier to orient yourself with the SkyTrain because I'd say it's like 3 or 4 kilometers north of the Sapan Taksin SkyTrain bridge and maybe 3 or 4 kilometers south. That's where we are. And that's where I think most people think Thonburi is.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to talk about it. If we get into the how do you get to Thonburi? If you're in Bangkok, how do you get to our area? Probably makes a lot of sense because it's defined by 2 things, as you said. One is the BTS line, right? There's a little bit above that, a little bit below that, and then there's the Chao Phraya River. But if you want to get here, if you want to make a journey to come see Greg and I's neighborhood, the good news is the BTS runs straight through Thonburi. It's a very easy way to get here. Sapan Taksin is your last bridge before you hit our side of the river. After that, you really have, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 total BTS stops that are in our area. The first one, the one that Greg and I use on a regular basis, is called Krung Thonburi. Beyond that, a kilometer past, not even that far, is Wangwian Yai. Probably a total butchering. Mm-hmm. And then we have Po Nimit. And then Talat Plu. Talat Plu, I can translate. That means market Plu. And after that, something called, oh, Jesus Christ. Wutakat. Oh, Thai languages. So we really have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different BTS stations that you can get off in and enjoy the area of Thonburi if you want to. Now, I think there's a better way to get here.
What's that?
I think there's a better way to get here as long as your name isn't Tim Rind from Canada, who just totally got lost getting here to see me tonight and took me over too many beers. And that is if you get off at the Sapan Taksin BTS and you take the Saton ferry across the river.
Right.
I think that's a much more fun, much more, I'll use the word romantic. It's just a much more interesting way to get here because you're actually utilizing the river, which is the whole reason Bangkok is actually here, is you get across that river on the ferry. Now you're just on the eastern border of Thonburi, but it's a fun way to get here, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that little ferry because you get off on Bangkok side and then you get on the ferry and then come across to the Thonburi side. Two interesting things about that ferry. First of all, the price of the ferry fluctuates pretty accurately with the price of gasoline.
Oh.
So when gasoline is high, like it is right now, you'll pay 5 baht, sometimes 6 baht to get across on the ferry. But when it goes down, they'll lower their price. So sometimes I've gotten across and they'll be like 2.5 baht.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is pretty decent of them, I think. They don't need to do that.
Huh.
And the second interesting thing about that side is that you get off on the Thonburi side at the ferry stop, and if you're lucky, you might get a glimpse of Mudam, which is the giant black pig that lives at the pier.
That's the name of that. Oh, I've seen that big fat black pig quite a few times. Mudam is his name.
Yeah, it looks so delicious. I mean, friendly. But it's just, it's massive. It's a huge fat pig, and it just lolls around all day and eats cat food. That's what they feed it.
And the lady that's across the pathway from it has no problem at all selling mu ping at the same, which is barbecue pork. So you can get barbecue pork, or you can see, what's the name of the pig again?
Mudam.
Oh, which means black pig, right?
Right. That's what I call it. Black pig.
That's black pig.
You know, the pig is just sitting there all day, just getting wafting fumes from the barbecued meat of its relatives, going, "Oh man, one day, man, I'm going to rise up. I'm going to get my revenge."
And right past the big black pig, if you walk up the little alleyway that takes you to Charoen, the street that Greg and I both live on, you will pass Thonburi Muscle Beach, as I call it.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is an outdoor weightlifting and exercise equipment, and it is always, I can't think of any time I have been there when it's not been jam-packed with people, guys, almost exclusively guys. I have seen a few ladies there as well. But it feels like Muscle Beach in Venice, California. If you've been, I used to live in LA and I've been to Venice Beach, and it is just, buff guys working out, grunting and sweating and showing people how cool they are. It's the Thai version of that. It's very much what it is.
I walk by and I'm like, wow, every one of these guys could pop my head off like a Pez dispenser.
No doubt.
Some of those guys are huge.
There's usually only 1 or 2 token Falang that are in the areas that are working out there with them, but the rest of them are just overly buffed Thai dudes doing their whole Muscle Beach workout on this public equipment type stuff. And more power to them. They're even there when it's like 45°C outside. These dudes are there at 2:00 in the afternoon, picking up heavy things and putting them down. And I do not understand why they would do that.
Yeah, man, the great equipment there. They got like buckets full of cement and bench press benches with truck tires on the side. Right. I think, hey, man, to your body, 40 kilograms is 40 kilograms. Doesn't matter if it's cement or a $3,000 Nautilus machine.
Yeah, and it's like Magnus Magnuson worked out there if he would have been Thai. It would have been the total place for the whole Ironman competition. That's awesome. You've got to stop and you only will see that if you take the ferry across the river. Now, Greg, I had written down here on our notes that there's, the commuter boat is a great way to get up and down the Chao Phraya River, but the commuter boats really don't stop on our side of the river. When you get on one, they bounce around the other edge on the Siloam side all the way up until you get to the Royal Palace and everything around that area. And going further south from us, they stop at Ayutthaya in a few spots, but they don't really stop on the Thonburi side. Do you agree with that assessment, or am I mischaracterizing?
Yeah, no, they don't stop here because why would they? Like, everyone goes to the eastern side of the river, which is the Sapantaksin Pier, the Siloam Pier.
Let me tell you why they do stop here.
What do you mean?
As I began this little piece of segment, I made fun of a guy named Tim Rind from Canada who came to see me today. He accidentally did not get on this Haton ferry. He asked information where to get on, and they sent him to the commuter boat. And so he wound up getting on a commuter boat. He went past Asiatique before he contacted me and said, I think I'm going the wrong way. Oh, man. And I said, yes, you are. Get off now. And he said, they won't let me off. They're turning the boat around. I said, okay, fine. Just get back off on the Sapantaksin Bridge and I'll walk you through. And he said, I'm on a commuter boat and they're letting me off on your side of the river. And I said, no, they're not. You have no idea where you are. Send me a picture on Google Maps of where you are right now, because there's no way you've convinced one of the commuter boat drivers to drop you off on the Thonburi side of the ferry. No, that's where they dropped him off.
Wow, damn, Tim, you're like the most convincing guy in the world.
I've lived here for 2 years.
You could sell a refrigerator to an Eskimo. How'd you get him to drop you off on this side of the river? That doesn't happen.
Amazing job, Tim. Amazing job getting that. So yes, technically no commuter boat stops here. However, if you get on a commuter boat and you play totally dumb, I guess eventually it will take you back to our place. Maybe so.
Hey, man, the dumb tourist thing works, can get you out of a lot of scrapes. Well, what's happening? I don't know. Well, good on you, Tim. Yeah, but yeah, generally, I find the boat is the nicest, sort of most Sabai way to get here. But let me ask you, Evo, backing up a little bit, because when you and I met, when we first met, you didn't live down here. You lived way out on Nuuk. Yeah. So why did you move here, and what do you like about living in Thonburi? Like, why would someone want to live here or visit here?
So we moved on this side of the river because when Sheila got her job at the school she is administering, she's the assistant principal at a private Thai school. It's out in Samut Sakhon, a little further west of town. And by a little, I mean like 40 kilometers. It's a long ways away. And the buses that pick up the Western teachers and take them to the school, they stop from Sathon. They stop at Kong Thonburi, and they also stop, I think, maybe at Wang Mian Yai. So these are the spots that they stop at. So we knew we had to move somewhere here, was the idea. And we chose this location in Thonburi because the minute you get across the Sapantaksin Bridge, the minute you go from Siloam across the Chao Phraya to Thonburi, rents drop drastically. It is currently significantly cheaper than anywhere else in Bangkok. Well, than Siloam, right? I mean, it drops precipitously. That's changing, but it drops in a big way. The second reason, and I didn't know this when we first moved here, is this entire area, this whole thing of Thonburi has almost no Western influence. I say almost. This whole area is not designed or built around catering to the Western influences. This is very much a Thai neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's Thai people that are off along that are here, and we're not the only ones that are around. But it is certainly not Ceylon. It is. There's no way this is Lower Sukhumvit.
No.
It's none of those things here. It's quieter. It shuts down at a reasonable hour, and it is very much a much more local neighborhood. I can see the major central business district right across the river from me, but when I get here, things are a little quieter, a little calmer. That's I think one of the big perks of us living here. It wasn't why we moved, but it's one of the things that I certainly loved about being here.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people come here. Just it's quieter. They're trying to rebrand this area and a little bit of the eastern side of the river, sort of along the northern part of ErQing, as the artistic district. Because over here, there's a lot of old warehouses and shop houses and stuff that have been converted into kind of cool hipster places, like the beer joint we talked about in the Patreon episode, and some of the art galleries and cool things like that. So it is quieter, and that's, I think, why people move here. But like you said, it's changing fast because there's a lot of new businesses coming really quickly, and some of them are huge, like the Icon Siam Mall.
Yeah, that's big.
And I think that's going to change the whole demographic makeup of this entire side of the river. It's like dropping a black hole and watching the gravity well just kind of suck everything.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely going to change it. But here's my take on the changes. The changes that it is bringing from Icon Siam, from the Jam Factory, from Save Our Souls, from the Vietnamese place that's down the way. There's no doubt there's a Western influence that comes with them. But when you go to these places and you look around, Greg, I mean, how often are you the only white guy in the room?
Yeah, unless I go to a couple of tourist places.
There's not the place. I mean, even if you go to Cinefest, the tiny little shopping mall between you and I, that's
a little community mall.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little community mall. There's a Villa Market inside, which, Villa is overpriced imported foods, but that's reality. But still, the vast majority of shoppers in there are Thai. Yeah, a lot of Westerners are there. Don't get me wrong, but it's not exclusively. It's not like this area that's been carved out just for us. This feels, I don't know how to say this properly. I'm going to try and see if it comes out properly. I've had 3 beers before we recorded the show. But it feels like this is a way that Bangkok is trying to bring into the city the Western culture in a more even-keeled fashion. We like our Kentucky Fried Chicken, even though it has nothing to do with the Kentucky Fried Chicken back in America. We like our Cinefest with our restaurants, but we like that because it's imported stuff, but we're still very Thai that are here that become the largest people that are purchasing here. It's just not an influx of a bunch of Farang in this area. Not yet, at least.
Right. And I kind of dig that about it. I kind of dig the sort of grungy vibe, because you can walk down the street and you can have a little motorcycle repair shop. Yeah. And then right next door, you'll have a coffee shop and then a noodle store. And then someone set up like a ratty old tailor or shoe shop or something like that. So there's a definite lack of like high rise buildings and things over here. One of the things I love about most about here is just getting out and discovering kind of the new things that are popping up, the new businesses and the sort of niche things. And like you said, they're aimed at Thais, but they've got a definite Western influence, like that SOS craft beer place that you talked about earlier, which is a little place. And there's a restaurant just up the street from me. Have you been to it? It's called Feed the Beast.
Yes.
Awesome. So good. And they've got really good brisket. Their pulled pork burger is to die for. It's just really good meat. And this place, I think it's only open on the weekends, but it's definitely like ribs and hamburgers and Farang inspired food, but there's very rarely a lot of foreigners in there. Every time I've been in there, it's been mostly Thais. So it's definitely aimed at the Thai people, which still make up most of the demographics of this neighborhood. But again, that's changing fast.
Speaking of changing fast, I know you want to talk about some of like the big civic projects that are going to come, which will likely completely reconstruct the neighborhood from what it is today until now. You want to jump in?
Yeah, well, it's kind of one of those things like, well, on one hand, it's losing that sort of sort of charm, that sort of bumpkin charm it's had with it comes with being separated from the main development of the main city, which is why people moved here. Because, like I've said this before, Bangkok's such a weird city because it's got this massive riverside that's completely underdeveloped. But, I don't think that's going to last for long because, first of all, we had the new Avani Riverside Hotel come in and take over the land that used to belong to the Marriott, and it's now the Anantara. Big new hotel gone up. And we mentioned Icon Siam, which is north of the Sapantaksin Bridge. That's going to be like a Central World or Paragon level shopping mall. Probably even bigger than those.
I just say bigger than those. Yeah, I just walked by it this afternoon or this evening, and it's like I was again reminded of how gigantic this thing is going to be. It's
huge. It's like standing in front of the Hoover Dam and looking up. It's massive. And a couple of new things too. They're also going to be building an LRT, a light rail transit, and it's going to go the Gold Line. It's going to go from Krung Thonburi BTS station back towards the river down to Cheranakan Road, and then it's going to turn north and go north along Cheranakan up towards Klong San Market, past Icon Siam, past the Millennium Hilton, and then it's going to go. Then it's going to cross Lat Ya Road where Taksin Hospital is, and then it's going to go west all the way out to what's the name of that? Tenon Pracharorop or something like that. So almost up to the old Memorial Bridge where it's going to connect with the Red Line and the Purple Line. So
that's where it's going to go all the way up. So it's going to go along the river and then cross the river and go up.
No, not cross the river. It's going to go north along the river and then turn left away from the river. The total length of the thing is going to be less than 3 kilometers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, wow. It's just a small line. I mean, it's clearly meant to ferry people from the BTS right into the mall.
Oh, right.
But yeah, that's going to really change things, not in the least in terms of how much traffic gets held up.
No kidding. Cheranakan already sucks with regular traffic as it is. When they put a light rail on it, it's going to be a nightmare. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, another thing that's going to happen is too, Asia Teak, which is on Charan Krung on the other side of the river, on the Bangkok side of the river. There's been plans for a long time to make Asia Teak 2 on this side of the river.
Where's that going to be?
Well, that's going to be almost directly across the river from where Asia Teak is. And you know how they're going to connect them?
A tunnel?
No, the opposite. The exact opposite of a tunnel, a cable car.
What?
Yeah, that's the plan anyway. Now, nothing's been finalized. Nothing's been, official, but that's the plan. So,
cable car. Oh my God.
So yeah, man, this side of the river has got some big stuff coming if all this stuff happens. So it's not going to be like it is now for much longer.
No, this whole thing is going to change, and it needs to change. I mean, if it's going to grow at the space it needs to grow. One of the things that I discovered moving here is, with the exception of the Villa Market, the expensive imported food place at Cinefest, there's one grocery store in all of Thonburi. There's one big grocery store. There's a big C in I'm going to butcher this name again. Isarapap.
It's Isarapap, yeah.
Isarapap, right? And that's a solid 5 or 6 kilometers from us, right? It's just a long ways away. So we have a little bit of a food desert here when it comes to going grocery shopping. The good news is, who goes to the grocery store anymore? Tesco delivers. So it doesn't really matter.
Well, I'm going to argue with that a bit because, yeah, there's a food desert for expats, but not for Thais. I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 wet markets within a 3 or 4 minute walk from my condo, and you can get all the vegetables and meat and stuff there. And there's actually across from where my condo is, there's a little funny wet market where the vegetables are, and they have a little meat stand there too. And this woman sits on a plank of plywood surrounded by vegetables and leafy greens, and it's just the grumpiest, bitchiest woman ever. But I stop almost a couple times a week and buy vegetables from her. It's sort of like a masochist almost coming to see the grumpy vegetable lady.
Sure.
There's a few of those in this neighborhood. So, there's lots of noodle places. There's a cool Indian joint. There's a Vietnamese joint. So you can still exist as like a very Thai in a very Thai fashion.
And we are not hurting over here for great restaurants. There's some fantastic places that you mentioned. We're not hurting for street food and street food-esque places. Your neighborhood, your little area is great for street food. There's plenty there. If you go off of Soy 14 on my place, there's lots of street food that shows up there. So we're not hurting for any of those aspects. So yeah, we've got that. We've got one mall today, the mall at Tapra, although we're about to have one much larger one when Icon Siam opens, and whatever that little terrible thing is down south of the Anatara. What is that little mall down there? The Riverside thing?
Riverside Plaza.
Yeah, which is just terrible. But the Siam's going to change all of that. So yeah, this area that we live in is very cool, and it's going to change because that's the only thing that is constant in the universe that is change. But I like the way, and I hate to say it this way because I just sound like some foreign idiot who's just passing judgment. But I like the way that the change is happening because it seems like an adoption of outside influences, but very much for the Thais. This is not, as I said previously, all of this development isn't for Farlang like us. These are for the people who live and were born and will stay in Thailand forever. It's the future of Thailand. It's happening in Thonburi. There, I said it. It's the future of Thailand. It's Thonburi.
That's a big claim from a big man. Yeah, the same thing happens here that happened in Siam 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah, you're probably right.
When I moved here in 2001, Paragon was just like an iron shell. And what was listener, go online and look up the Intercontinental Hotel Bangkok, where Paragon is right now. It used to be this beautiful old Art Deco massive hotel, like maybe 1 or 2 stories. It looked like a Star Trek spaceship. It was like this giant triangle that was sitting on this huge park of just beautiful manicured grass. They knocked that down and put up Paragon. So, it's just the way the Bangkok is progressing. It's the way all cities progress. And sometimes it's a bit of a shame they don't take more care to preserve the old buildings, but it is what it is. And that's what's happening in Thonburi now. So get over here while it's still relatively quiet, but it ain't going to stay that way forever.
No, it certainly will not. And we hope to continue to bring you these segments, or maybe Greg and Ed will continue to bring these segments as things go on and talk about what it's like to live in Bangkok for all the individual neighborhoods, because this is gigantic friggin' city. There's 14 million people that live here. Talking about Bangkok as one thing is simply not possible. We need to start breaking it down into smaller segments so that you can understand. And understanding is what we strive for here at the Bangkok Podcast, which is why every week we bring you everyone's favorite segment of the show, Love, Loathe, or Leave, where we look at one minor aspect of living in Bangkok and find out if it's something that we love about living in Bangkok, loathe about expat life, or if it's something that we hate so much that it just might cause us to leave Thailand. I don't mean switch neighborhoods. I mean actually leave Thailand. And this time, I believe I have the honors. Greg?
You do. Go nuts. What do you got? Lay it on me.
Speaking of neighborhoods, just across the river in the Silom area, you might, Greg, be familiar with a road called, and oh my God, this is the longest name in Thailand. I'm just going to call it Naratiwas. Mm-hmm. Its full name is Naratiwas Rajanagarindara. Let's go with Naratiwas. Naratiwas Road, right? Which is basically, if you are familiar with Bangkok, it's where the Chongnonsi BTS line stops. That is Naratiwas Road. Okay.
Right.
So position yourself for that particular road. You got it in your head, right? Yeah. There's another road that's called Silom. And Silom is like the main road that goes perpendicular to Naratiwas. And it basically defines, that corner right there defines where Silom area begins on Naratiwas and Silom intersection.
Right. Gotcha.
And I'm going to just say it out loud. Here's what I hate. Here's what I loathe about that intersection. When I am traveling on Naratiwas and I'm turning right onto Silom, I'll get a green light.
Okay.
A green light says you may now, Evo, and those who you're with, turn right. So I will turn right, and I will go across maybe maybe 50 meters, a little bitty tiny, like a drainage ditch that has been covered up. So I'm still on, and I tell you what, I'm on the one lane of traffic, and it's a split road, right? There's like 4 lanes here, but it's split. There's traffic going one way. You make a left, and then you have to cross traffic again. So when I make that, I'm sorry, I said a left. When I make a right turn, let's make it the right way. When I make that right turn on Ayutthaya onto Siloam, I can't go across the other Ayutthaya. I have to stop at a friggin' light again because the green light doesn't take me all the way across. It just puts me in that little weird no man's land on top of the little drainage ditch, and I have to wait for that light to turn red. The number of times, Greg, I have almost gone ahead, because in any other country in the gosh darned world, I would have turned right and continued forward. Nope, because traffic is zooming back and forth on the other direction. Loathe.
I know exactly the intersection you're talking about. It's the one with that big metal windmill there, right?
Yes, exactly right.
Right. So you turn into an intersection, but you're only allowed to go like halfway through the intersection before you have to stop again.
Thinking. Yes, exactly right. Maddening.
Yeah. I used to ride my bike home when I was riding to work through that intersection, and you still sometimes only get halfway through it where you have to stop. Yeah, I loathe it because it's not safe. It's confusing. They could probably put a computer in there and control those lights much more intuitively and logically, but I'm pretty sure that some cop in some booth connected to those lights is flicking them on and off as he sits there drinking his coffee, watching his Thai soap operas. But I loathe it because it's so potentially dangerous.
Double loathe for this one because it's the only place. I mean, I've driven a lot of places in the city, and that is the one that consistently always confounds me. And I drive that, I don't know, 3 times a month, and still I find myself locking up the brakes on my bike if I'm the first one to leave the intersection, because like, oh shit, that's right. This is that intersection again that I hate. The worst intersection in Bangkok.
Don't forget, man, the golden rule of driving in Bangkok: never be the last through a red light or the first through a green light.
I can understand why now. All right. As we mentioned at the very beginning of the show, we need to say thank you to a special person, QH. I'm going to call him because he said I could call him QH. You can call him EQ if you want, Greg. I'm going to call him QH. QH lended us his support for the show at the show shout out level. And I believe, Greg, you have some interesting stories to tell about Mr. QH.
QH, eh? Yes. Okay. Well, EQ, QH. Okay. I'll switch back to QH. I'll go by your nomenclature. That makes sense to me. And I certainly do have some interesting things to talk about QH. Well, as you know, Evo, he lives in Singapore, and he listens to the show with his girlfriend to get his Bangkok fix. And as he said in a nice message he wrote to us, he said, quote, "Yearly visits to Bangkok have become a must. Chomping on all the food and experiencing Bangkok as locals would do. My girlfriend is just as mad into Thai culture as I am, and living as expats in Bangkok for a couple of years in the future would probably be the dream for us," unquote. So that's great to hear. Yeah. But check this out. Despite sounding like a normal, soft-spoken, well-adjusted Singaporean, QH is actually a total badass.
Of course he is.
Sure. Check this out. The reason he's looking so forward to coming to Thailand is that QH is actually, in secret, an underground chewing gum kingpin. Now, as you know, chewing gum is illegal in Singapore, but he supplies all the rebellious high school students and motorbike gangs here with their Hubba Bubba fix through QH's connections with the Illuminati.
Right.
His girlfriend is the brains, QH is the muscle of the operation, but he's smart too. He knows that the good times can't last forever, so he's planning to lay low in Thailand for a while, and the Bangkok podcast is the best way for he and his girlfriend to get a bead on how things work here. So, QH, thank you for your support, buddy, and we wish you the best of luck as you transition from a chewing gum kingpin to a casual connoisseur of Thai street food.
Well, thank you once again, QH, for supporting us and also for not getting caned. There's 2 Singapore references for you, supporting us on Patreon. And if you would like for us to say nice things about you, or Greg make up crazy things about you, maybe you just want to get the show early, or you want to have access to the special Patreon-only bonus content. This one we talked about 6:09 a.m. prostitutes. It was.
We talked about. I think you mostly talked about that.
Yeah, that might have been it all. But anyhow, please head to Bangkok Podcast/support and get on our support list today. We really certainly do appreciate it.
And you listening right now with the headphones in, thank you for listening to the Bangkok Podcast. If you have something on your mind or you just want to drop us a line to say hello, just go to bangkokpodcast.com and leave a comment on the contact form, or you can reach out directly to me on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg.
Hey, I'm still around for a show or two, and you can find me at EvoTerra, or if you'd like to send the show your message, go to Facebook, go to Twitter, go to the lines. We are Bangkok Podcast in all of those places. We're very good at responding to your comments, answering questions, and then spreading the praise that you have heaped upon us anywhere you do so. For Greg Jorgensen, I am EvoTerra. We'll be back next week with more stories of our lives lived right here in the City of Angels on the Bangkok Podcast. Choki krap.
Yeah,
so Sheila just called me in and said, I hope that was the bonus episode because you were a little rough.
Yeah, I didn't say much for that bonus episode. I just kind of sat back and drank my rum and soda.
That's good.
Whiskey soda.
I had two big topics to talk about, so now we will not do the rest of it. So anyhow, I'll try and be a little more calm and cool. Are we good here? Do we have everything that we need?